episode 16 of People Are the Answer. I truly believe that people are the only answer to the world's many problems. I'm serial entrepreneur Jeffrey M. Zucker, here to learn how innovators are creating outsized, transformational social impact. Today's episode features Halim Flowers, an activist, poet, musician, painter, and overall rising artist on a mission to love everyone unconditionally. He was sentenced to life in prison at age 16, spent 22 years in jail, and has been fighting to give young people in similar situations an opportunity to be heard and to potentially get back to building their lives. While incarcerated, Halim never lost faith and continued to learn and fight, while also making a documentary and publishing 11 books. We should all be grateful for his perseverance and his ability to come back as a force for good and love. Halim and I discussed his difficult upbringing and the system he was dragged into, his experience while incarcerated and the policy it led him to pursue, and the empire he's been building since he got out while pushing for positive social change, and much more. Here is Halim Flowers on People Are the Answer. Halim, thanks so much for joining me on People Are the Answer.
Thank you for having me.
It really is an honor, and would love if you could just start off by telling us who you are, where you're based, and what you're up to.
My name is Halim Flowers. I'm based in Washington, D.C. I'm a creative. I paint, rap, poetry, spoken word performances, design clothes. I'm just engaged with creativity. I invest. Right now cryptocurrency is sinking right now. So,
Yep.
yeah.
Nice. I appreciate it. I love that. Similar to me, you're up to a lot of things, and creativity is a big part of that.
Yes.
So, can you tell us how you got where you are, and what it was like growing up as a kid in the DC area?
Yeah, for me, being socially constructed as Black, my experience was, unique to that social construction, and 9 times out of 10 that includes intergenerational poverty, due to law and policy a lot of times, historically anyway, and crime, drug, alcohol abuse, all of the different things that accompanies poverty in a hyper-capitalist, society. But I was raised there before the modern, gentrification infrastructure thing that's going on now. So it was just like, it was predominantly Black, predominantly poor, and with poverty and comes crime and despair, and all of the negative ramifications that just come with poverty, and in inner city America.
Yeah.
And then it was the 80s, so it was crack cocaine. It was DC had the highest murder rate, so it was fatal, it was hopeless, it was poor, it was even though this what they like to throw out about DC era of that time in the 80s and 90s is the iconography of Mayor Marion Barry getting arrested for crack cocaine. But it was deeper than just that one person and that one incident. And but from what I learned is how to survive. I learned how to operate under fatal situations. And even me, even though that I had some of the highest test scores of any student in America, at the age of 11, before I went to junior high school, and this afforded me an opportunity to take my pre-SATs, and I scored high, and I was taking classes at Howard University when I was 11, and but I still started selling drugs at the age of 12, just to the poverty and the lack of, what I'm gonna say, of the lack of love for myself. And when you have a lack of love for yourself, you want to fit in to what others are celebrating. And at that time in my community, in my city in Washington, D.C., even though academic prowess was celebrated in my household, in my family, it just wasn't something that was celebrated in my community, not for a boy anyway. So what was celebrated was money, violence, and materialism. So that's what I stopped going to school when I was 12 and started selling drugs to make money, to get materialistic things. And when you get money in the life of crime, people going to try to take your money, and then you start engaging in gun violence.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it certainly sounds like it was a rough time coming up. I mean, it's impressive that you are where you are. And, so it sounded like some of those things that you had to do were necessitated by trying to survive.
Growing up in certain neighborhoods, is unfortunately you have to fight. You have to
Yeah.
fights turns to fist fights and then knife fights and gun fights and then you end up in prison and then you in fist fights and knife fights and it's just a continuous cycle of people just what I believe is just poor and encouraged to destructive behavior towards self, and that's the drug and alcohol abuse. And then when you don't have that love for yourself and you start engaging in these intoxicants and stuff like that, it becomes easier to harm other people. So for me,
Right.
I was someone that intentionally dumbed myself down to fit in, and it led me to getting 2 life sentences at the age of 16 for just being with someone who allegedly shot and killed someone. And but I wasn't woofing when he did it. I did set the events in play that led to the guy getting shot, but I wasn't with my friend when he did shoot the guy. And but um, my lack of enthusiasm to want to cooperate with the U.S. Attorney's Office to prosecute my friend for the shooting led to them charging me as an unarmed accomplice to the shooting, and I went to trial. And I was innocent, but I got convicted, and I got 2 life sentences when I was 16.
Wow. I mean, I can only imagine that type of circumstance, getting 2 life sentences at the young age of 16, no less. Um, so you spent 22 years in prison, is that right?
Yeah, 22 years.
And when those life sentences initially came down, do you remember kind of where your mind initially went? You were so young.
For me, when I was convicted, I was disappointed, but growing up in DC, it was normal for teenagers to either lose their lives in the streets or lose their lives in the courtroom. So even though I was
Yeah.
devastated, in my community it wasn't abnormal. So my mind was already prepared for the graveyard or the courtroom in prison. Um, so I got convicted, and then 2 months later I got sentenced. So by the time the 60 days came for me to get sentenced, and the judge said life, I already knew what I was going to get, and my mind was prepared for it. So only thing I was thinking, I just wanted to leave the courtroom, and I just wanted to get back to the jail so I could just begin the process of appealing my convictions and begin this fight to get out. I knew it was going to be a fight, and I knew I was going to win. I just didn't know that it would take as long as it took. Um,
Yeah.
but I always knew, it was devastating. But for me, I'm kind of one of those type of people who have delayed emotional responses to things, and I react first to things rational first, and then later on I may cry about it later. And so for me, it was like it was surreal, and I'm glad it was surreal because I never accepted it as a reality. I was just like, it's just not possible for me to die in prison from the age of 16, and I could live to be 90. My grandfather's in his 90th year right now, so I just didn't think it was possible for me to be in prison that long.
Yeah.
For some, even if I did do it. I mean,
Right.
I was a kid. You know what I'm saying? It just didn't sit right with me that I would be in prison until I'm a senior citizen. I didn't get that type of. Even though the United States of
Yeah.
America is the strongest government in the world, and I respect that. But it's a high power, and I believe in it. And I just knew it would take time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's incredible that you're able to maintain trust in the system and believing that you'd make it out. As I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that could have just given up, and your kind of tenacity to get where you knew you needed to go is really
Oh, I had
inspiring.
no trust in the system. Let me just. I
Okay.
didn't trust the system at all. I just knew that it's like with software, right? If you study the software, you can hack the system,
Hmm.
right? You can create your own algorithms to manipulate the system to your outcomes. And I always knew that I went back on it. I'm academically gifted. And I was seeing in the prison system, in the courtrooms, these people wasn't that bright. They just had more experience than me, and they had more resources than me. So I just wasn't equipped with the experience. Even though I had the intelligence and the tenacity, I didn't have the training to be able to beat them. And I knew if I could go back and study the law, that I could find the mistakes that they made, and I would eventually find my way out. But it wasn't because I trusted the system. It was
Hmm.
because I just trusted my ability to locate their mistakes and to legally articulate my ideas in a way through litigation that I would put them in a corner and make them admit that they
Hmm.
violated my constitutional rights,
Yeah.
and compel them to let me go.
Right. So you trusted yourself to put the work in necessary to kind of take the right steps within the system you
Absolutely,
were dealing with. Yeah,
absolutely.
that's incredible, and it's just such a shame how many victims of circumstance and poverty and systemic issues are dealing with similar types of situations. One aspect that's been focused on is you were only 16, and my understanding is that you've been working in various capacities on legislation to change what types of sentencing can come to minors, and I would love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah. While I was incarcerated, I had the opportunity to start my own publishing company. I published 11 books through my writings, through my books, communicating with different individuals and institutions, whether it was universities or nonprofit organizations. We were able to compel local DC legislators to enact a law known as Incarceration Amendment Reduction Act, which allows any human being under the age of 18 who has served 20 years in prison to get the opportunity to petition the court for resentencing and resentencing and release. So we got that done in 2017. I was able to get out in 2019. Once I got on into Before I got out in 2018, we got the law amended to where, as though instead of 20 years, it was 15 years you have to serve. And then once I got out, I had the opportunity to advocate to get the age increased from, instead of anyone under the age of 18, to anyone under the age of 25. So that's what we just passed, known as the Second Look Act. And now we are in the process of changing the felony murder accomplice liability doctrine law, which I was convicted under, which allows for a person to be convicted of a murder who doesn't commit a murder nor have an intent to commit a murder. They just have to be present in the enactment of a felony. So we getting that law changed now to where, as though someone in my circumstance would never even get charged. And so when we doing it, we got the law passed where, as though under the Incarceration Reduction Amendment Act, where the juveniles are no longer institution or detained at the adult DC jail facilities. So they just remain in juvenile facilities till they're 18. And eventually, my goal is to see it with children, um, where the criminal law is in alignment with civil law. As investors and entrepreneurs, we know well about civil law, that we can't enter into a contract with a minor under the age of 18. They're known as an infant, and they can't be held civilly uh, liable for negligence. Their guardians or their parents will have to be held liable under civil litigation. So we want to get the criminal jurisprudence in alignment with the civil law. So that's how I go to is though children are children, they're infants, they can't be incapacitated for the remainder of their lives and held, liable as adults, when they're children. And unfortunately, as you mentioned, which was once a more of like a racial poverty, like a race and class issue, dealing with gun violence and criminal law response to it. You're a resident of the state of Colorado, was now these mass shootings, whether it's in Aspen or Denver or Columbine. It knows no race. It knows no class. It shows up in all different social spectrums now, where people are just using guns to administer violence to anyone. It's no longer the super predator. We were the super predators. This with the Clintons and the Bidens, and they were calling us the super predators. This theory about black and brown boys that was created in Princeton University by John DeIlio, um, and now we see that this gun violence problem, whether it's Parkland or Newtown, no matter where it's at, is festering. Aurora, all races, all classes, and now I think because that it's not just the poor black gangbanger, that now people are starting to see it as a mental health issue.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully something has brought mental health to the forefront. I agree it's taken too long and taken coming into other communities as you've mentioned, but hopefully we are going to start improving in that area.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about your time incarcerated. You talked about starting a publishing company and writing 11 books. Would love to hear more about that and just kind of how you got through it overall.
Yeah, for me, man, like I cry about prison now. I never cried about prison when I was in prison. I remember I cried one time. It was my first Thanksgiving in 1997 because I just like to eat, in jail the food is terrible. And I remember I was so sad that I went inside the basketball gym in the unit. I closed the doors and I told the man, "Don't come in here." And I just went and laid on the floor and just cried, because I wanted some turkey and some stuffing, just a kid, So, um, but for me, going back to having that, I'm so thankful that I was academically sound because I developed a ferocious reading habit, and I was blessed to have a mother who worked at the Library of Congress. So any literature that's ever been copyrighted, all I would have to do is request it from my mother, and she can go downstairs at her job and just print it for me and mail it to me. So I was able to escape in some sense the the cruel and unusual nature of the way that the penal system is structured in America. I can't say the world; I can only say the United States of America. Um, because every day it was torture for me. I'm not accustomed to living like an animal, to being treated like an animal, and I never would accept that I was anything other than a human being. And that's what the current carceral setting is structured as. It's a school to prison pipeline that flushes children down the drain of the human waste disposal prison industrial complex. And the literature and the arts, me reading books, it exposed me to a world, like when I met the older guys in the federal system and they would give me like the Forbes magazines and the Black Entrepreneur and Money magazine and Inc. and Entrepreneur magazine and the Wall Street Journal. And I was like, wow, it's not even about me just going home. I could literally become a billionaire. Like I'm smart. I didn't have to just sell drugs. I could have sold anything. So once I really came to that reality through literature and started to reading about like Aspen and Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and the Federal Reserve, and the money supply, M1, M2, M3, the Basel Accords, and the Davos, Switzerland event, the Economic World Forum. My mind just started to get so expansive, and it was like I was in prison physically, but I wasn't there mentally and spiritually. And I knew that I came into like contact with Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, and James Allen as a man thinketh, and eventually I saw The Secret, and I read Eckhart Tolle books, The Power of Now, Stillness Speaks. I just believe in the law of attraction, and at some point in that 22-year journey, I saw where I'm at today. As a globally uh, recognized and commercially successful artist, creative, and through me seeing this here back then, it made the day for day humiliation of being in prison, the inhumanity, the inhumane nature of it. It made it more. As I say, it made me be able to endure it more, because I knew that the end would justify the means. And when I read Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, and one of the practices that he did, he would see himself while he was in the concentration camps. He would see himself lecturing about this at universities throughout the world. And that helped him to get through. And I just adapted that practice from Viktor Frankl. I saw myself doing the talks, doing the interviews, doing the lectures, and going around the world and being successful while I was inside of the cell.
Yeah.
But it was torture, though. I don't want to make no light of it. It was torture.
Right. Well, I mean, that ability to visualize the future is definitely got to help get through that horrible place. And in reading about you and watching all your videos and stuff like that, and in preparation, one of the things I saw you said is that, you mentioned it a little bit. The Wall Street Journal, you said, saved your life, and you mentioned how it sort of opened your mind. But maybe just go a little bit more into that. About how the newspaper saved you.
In prison, it's a daily, it's a system that's structured to dehumanize you. So you have to be very creative in developing a personal curriculum that reminds you that you're human, just human, right? And then on top of that, you need incentives daily to think that you're other than a convict or a lifer, or that even if you do get out, you're just going to work a menial, meaningless job for menial labor, for a salary. And so the Wall Street Journal was that thing that came. I remember it was Monday through Friday. Then they started the Saturday edition, right? So for 6 days a week, I had something that was reminding me that the world was moving, right? And that it was exposing me to cheeses and wines and vacation destinations in Sausalito, California, and islands off the coast of Kenya and Africa. It was a daily reminder of a world other than the cell, and I needed that because it saved me. It saved me from a system and the agents that operate within it that are structured to operate upon deconstructing my humanity. And just by me seeing a Rembrandt painting in the Wall Street Journal, me seeing that Prada just launched their new fall line, and and they was going to have the show at Paris Fashion Week, and seeing that, Jay-Z and Beyonce would be at the Fashion Week, and I'm seeing how people who I'm seeing how people making moves, and I'm seeing that the world has so much to offer, and I'm seeing how these ideas that I'm putting down on paper in prison, how I can manifest these things if I just make the right uh, connections genuinely to develop the social capital. That's what the Wall Street Journal was. It was daily showing me people, places, and things that um, were benefiting the world, and that how I could maneuver through the world in a way in which I could live out my dreams. I could manifest my dreams. And it came 6 days a week, and it saved me, because other than that, you just, people in prison having prison 98% of the time they having their conditioned to prison, and they having prison conversations, prison aspirations, prison politics, prison economy. And I was like, I don't care who got the most stamps on the yard or who run this group or that. I don't even care. My objective is to stay healthy, get out of here, and become a billionaire.
Yeah, I mean, I love that you maintained that vision throughout, and then you were devouring these newspapers and all of this literature, and helping you kind of see out in the world a little bit and prepare even more. And while you were devouring this literature, you are also creating your own. You talked about your 11 books.
Mm-hmm.
I know you write poetry as well. So what were you writing about while you were incarcerated?
Well, my first 3 books were books of poetry. Um, and I was just writing poetry about my experiences, what I was going through, what it felt like to be, um, to not go to your prom, to not, graduate from school, what it felt like. I remember I wrote the 3rd book of poetry in 2007, and it was my 10-year recognition of me being in for 10 years. And it's just like, like, damn, I've been here for a decade. People who were kids when I was growing up, now when I left, people who were, 7, 8 years old, now they're going to their prom. They're in college and stuff like that. So, but then I kind of like evolved, and I wrote a book called Mind Over Matter, and it was just about principles that I believe that if a person applied them to the way they thought, that they would get a different outcome in the tangible world. And I knew that when I wrote the book, um, that people would be like, if it was like that, then you would be out of prison. And I was like, okay, I understood that. I wrote that book. I wrote another book called Be Great Wherever You Are with Our Fathers. I was writing like these self-help literature books. And I wrote a financial literacy book. And I knew that the commercial viability of them wouldn't have any credence in the market until I was released and successful. But now people come back now, and they're like, oh, how were you able to do this? And I said, well, I wrote a book about it while I was in there. Right. And I told you what I was going to do. I even wrote one book called Time, How to Do It and Not Let It Do You, and gave you a step-by-step guide on how to come into prison, the benefit that you can get out of it, and how if you follow this blueprint, once you come out of it, that you will be at least a millionaire. Right? So now people want to read it. So, but those are the things I was writing about. What I was going through, because poetry is about how you feel and getting in touch with my feelings. It was therapeutic for me. And then like writing books to like motivate people to think and live better. And then I wrote a financial literacy book, because financial literacy is definitely important to me. And then I wrote a book about my life too, which I wrote in 2013, and currently in the process now of putting together a proposal with my literary agent to get a deal for the new book about my life, how I got out, and the things I've been doing since the 3 years I've been out now.
That's awesome. I look forward to seeing that out there, and and grabbing some of your other books as well. Um, and throughout all of your years and all this stuff that you were doing, you were also working on your case, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was
And
going to the law library every day. I had to learn Latin because the Anglo-Saxon laws is written in Latin most of the time. So I had to learn Latin, which was cool. And it's just it's a daily when you're going up head to head against the U.S. Attorney's Office, who has the whole resource of the United States of America, and attorneys who have law degrees and things of that nature. You gotta be at the top of your game, and that's how I trained every day in the law library, because I knew what I was up against, and I wanted to be at the top of my game in the legal arena.
were there any moments that made you feel like giving up or
Never,
feel like you couldn't get there? Okay.
never.
And how were you able to maintain that mindset and confidence?
Um, I had no other option. For me, it's like they say sink or swim. Like literally, I
Yeah.
didn't want to sink because I had examples all around me. Like if I sink, I'm going to become this, where my whole life becomes concerned with, um, you know, what's on TV and who running this TV, or who got this seat in the TV room, and and who it just was so, it was so unnatural to me. Like some people just naturally just assume into the prison environment. To me, it was just like I felt like I couldn't choose to do it. It's just like, how, like when somebody take a fork and scrape it on a plate. That's that type of feeling. Like I'm like, I can't fit into this. It's just not. You could just feel when something is not for you. And I knew that
Yeah.
if I gave up, that my life would become a continuous fork going across the plate. That I would like, damn, I really just gave up, man, and I just gotta hear this irritating sound in my soul every moment of my life because I didn't just gave up and assimilated into the prison culture of what's expected of me by those who created this system and operated and perpetuated. You know.
So going through, your time incarcerated, working throughout to get out of there,
Mm.
um, at any point, was there anything that really surprised you about those experiences?
It was a lot of surprises because, you know, I think like what makes shows like Orange is the New Black and Oz so successful because everything in the world, especially in America, through social media and the internet, every part of everyone's life is exposed. Everybody is like this all day, living through their phone and sharing every intimate detail of their life. And it's this alternate universe that has millions of people within it that people know is there, but they don't get to see it, right? And it's a curiosity about these jails and prisons and detention centers and what goes on inside of them. So, for me, not having any experience being in jail and prison before, it was a lot of surprises. The most I could say surprising thing to me was, I guess the most surprising thing to me was how quick people forget about you. Like people that you was cool with, and like that was surprising. Like how just life just went on, and you just don't hear from people. And I understand now because I'm out, and I understand. But I didn't understand. It surprised me how some people just forgot about me. And how I was able to meet new people who I never met before on the outside world, and they would come see me. They would send me money. They really love me. I'm like, damn, I don't even know these people on the outside, but I can meet them through writing letters and phone calls, and my relationships are stronger with them than the people I knew on the outside. Yeah.
Well, it must have been tough to see that, but the fact that you were able to make some, new friends and new supporters through
Mm-hmm.
your efforts, I mean, it's very important. I'm sure that there's plenty of people that aren't able to do that.
Yeah, for me, it all goes back to, like I said, once I started reading like those James Allen books and those
Mhm.
Napoleon Hill books about, the law of attraction. And once I really started to, because jail afforded me a lot of opportunity to be still and to ponder and reflect. And I started to see it like, you know what? The reason why you don't hear from these people because you don't think like them no more. It's not even about them forgetting about you. So I was personalizing it. And then once I realized, like, if you really are certain about this law of attraction, then you will attract the people, places, and things that are in alignment with your vibrations and your frequencies. And you can't get caught up on that's my cousin, that's my sister, that's my brother. Like the energy doesn't know these titles. All energy knows energy, and vibrations connect with vibrations. And if we at the same pitch, Jeffrey Zucker and Halim Flowers, they gonna come together. Even though Jeffrey's in Ashland, Colorado, and Halim's in Washington, D.C., and he did 22 years in prison, and Jeffrey has a completely different background, but their vibrations, their frequencies are going to bring them together, and it's just going to utilize people, places, and things to make that happen. So once I really like accepted that indisputable reality about energy and matter, right, and vibrations. Um, it just was what it was, and that was the other surprising thing was that how um, once you start operating on a certain frequency, how um, it's a lonely journey because if you're operating at higher levels, the Maslow's pyramid. Most people that I knew, they still at the bottom of the pyramid. I'm all the way up here. So I'm looking around like, but they still here. They're still struggling
Yeah.
for food, shelter, you know, clothing. So not to create a hierarchy of better or worse, it's just that we on different frequencies. And
Yeah.
and you gotta accept it because some people get what they call survivor's remorse, where they feel bad about being successful.
Right. Yeah. I wanted to add in here, this obviously isn't going to publish for a couple of weeks, but we're recording on January 21st, and I know that's a significant date for you.
You know what? I just realized that today was the 21st. I mean, like I remember when we scheduled it that I
Yeah.
wanted to do on this day, but I just realized that this is the day that 25 years ago, I was arrested, and I'm actually in the process on March 21st, the day I was released. I'm doing a collection. I'm dropping a collection of sneakers, and it's a uniquely designed sneaker for each year that I was incarcerated. So it'll be a sneaker for 97, 98, 99, and it'll go up to 2019, and then I'll have three artist proof sneakers for 2021 and 22, which I won't sell. I'll just keep those. But it's only one sneaker for each year, so it's only just 22 sneakers total. But yeah, I mean, like this is the date that I was arrested. But for me, I approach every day the same. I don't celebrate birthdays or holidays or anything of that nature. So I guess I didn't lock on to it like that. Like, oh, this is the day I was arrested, and it's just a date. And somebody created a calendar, the Gregorian calendar that we call it. And the first of the year used to be April. And then they changed it to January, and it was happened to be 31 days, and the 21st day of this man created title for that experience that I had at that moment just happened to be on January 21st, 1997. It was just 25 years ago. So it's definitely a pivotal moment in my life.
Yeah.
Beginning of a 22-year a storm, but storms produce rainbows.
So you go through that 22-year storm. You get out in March 2019. Then come March 2020, a year later, we go
Right,
into COVID. We go into lockdown. You know,
right.
specifically, especially for you, someone that had been locked up to a much greater extreme for so long.
Hmm.
What was that experience like for you, and how did you feel about kind of how society was responding to it?
For me, I had a year because I always said like when I was planning, when I knew I was getting out, my date was definite, and I would tell people, I said my first year is just social capital. I'm not even trying to make money. I'm just making friend money, right? I'm just
Yep.
building genuine relationships with people, not to make them transactional later on, but just genuine relationships with people who I deem to be successful in whether social or economical. Um, and I just want to, build relationship when I come in March 2020 and really start to monetizing my ideas and my projects, that I would have my tentacles in so many different industries and with investors and things of that nature that I would be successful. So March 2020 come and we on lockdown. So so for me, the world was in panic mode. Um, for me, I was like, oh, this is all I know. And I remember it's a scene in the Dark Knight movie with Batman and Bane, and they in like the sewer and they fighting, and Batman, does one of his normal moves. He hits the lights out, and Bane is like, "Oh, you were the dark. I know the dark. I was born in it. I was raised in it. Like so for me, it was like confinement. This when I'm at my best. This when I write my books. Like, and then now it's like I had an iMac and a MacBook and a camera, and I had money. I just got a big grant from the Art for Justice Fund. Um, I had my own home. I had a wife. My wife was pregnant. She was working at the U.S. Capitol and was getting paid from home. So we had money, we had home, we had love, we had a backyard, um, and I could order. And I just started like looking at art, paintings, and I told my wife I went to a show in Georgetown in D.C. and I was looking at the paintings in the exhibit, and I asked the guy, I said, "How much is it for that painting right there?" It was like 15,000. And I was like, "How much is it for that broken TV on the floor?" I said, "Is that all that is? It's a broken TV?" I said, "Yeah, the artist smashed." So how much did that cost? He said 15,000. And I went home and told my wife, I said, I need to start painting. I need to start painting. Um, so then the quarantine came, so I just started ordering these paints and stuff like that, and I had the social capital in place. All the people who I knew, um, like your sister, people like that,
Yeah.
they collected art and stuff like that. So I just started posting stuff on Instagram. I learned how the gallery system worked, and I just started contacting the different galleries because everybody was in the house, so they had time to do nothing but read emails and DMs, and I was able to, while other people were, um, this was the thing with society. People were told that they couldn't go to places, so the governments had infringed upon their mobility. And then people on top of that were told that when you go out of your home, if you're allowed to go somewhere, you have to wear a mask. So now the government had infringed on their body, right? Me, I was used to that. Other people weren't. I've been stripped naked in front of 100 people, told to bend over, spread my butt, cough, like lift your nut sacks, open your mouth. I done been through all of that. So for me, um, I just was focused on building my brand and taking advantage of the opportunity that everybody in the world who you may want to contact for all your ideas are now in the house. right? So I saw
Yeah.
the good in it. Other people were saying what they were missing out on. I
Right.
saw the opportunity. So, your SWOT, strength, your weakness, your opportunities and threats. I was looking at the strengths and the opportunities. And
Yeah.
I was able to start a whole new career as a visual artist with painting. And through painting, I became a millionaire.
That's awesome.
Never
Congratulations.
painted before the quarantine. Never drew, never sketched, never picked up a paintbrush in arts and crafts. Never. But I know business and
Wow.
I know people. And if you know business, supply and demand, and you produce a quality product, and it's just after that, it's just promotion, placing, and pricing. And you got the right people in your life that's genuinely your friends, like your sister is to me, who make the introductions to people like you. And one makes two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I love that you were able to make the most of the situation and, you know, really do something incredible with your art. I've been following you on social media and going on your website and stuff. I love your art and I love the messages that you incorporate, and the fact that you always incorporate words in your art, I think is really powerful.
Yeah, it's definitely important. A lot of times I like to use the word like love, whether it's love is the vaccine, love equals MC squared, agape, a Hebrew term, ahavat shinun, which means unconditional love. Like I like to put love in the works, but also deal with certain issues in the work from a loving intention and not a space of anger or hate. And I think that resonates with people because as you can see, I was released in 2019, so we were coming into an election year that caused a lot of divisiveness, and then after the election, the people sacked the Capitol. That created divisiveness, and then now with the vaccinated versus the unvaccinated, so something like a medicine created a whole division in between humanity, and it was like um people are so focused on what they are against more than what they for that anything, because this too shall pass. So just like the other day, I seen the prime minister in London. He's like, "Hey, look, no more masks, no more this, no more. You vaccinated, you vaccinated. Who cares? Just we living with it." So now I'm like, damn. Now what are the people now want to be beefing about? Like once this is over with, would it be the midterm election? Would it be the
Right.
2024? So people um people just they need love.
Yeah.
They need love. People need to learn people need to be reminded how to love themselves because we live in this world with social media. People are able to Photoshop and filter their reality, and people see this Photoshop filtered presentation and they look at themselves, and if it doesn't fit within that ideal of what is acceptable or beauty or rich or what is successful, then they do things. They just don't love themselves, and they try to emulate with somebody else, and they start to engage in personal habits that are harmful to themselves and then others. So
Yeah.
I just want to, with my clothes, with my paintings, with my poems, with my music, um, with all of my self enterprise endeavors, I want to be a part of things that pushes the culture towards love. And I'm not right, I'm not left, I'm not Democrat, I'm not Republican, I'm not conservative, I'm not liberal, I'm not Black Lives Matter, I'm not Antifa, I'm not MAGA, I'm not none of that. I'm just focused on love. You know, I believe
Yeah.
the love
Absolutely.
is the center that people need to get grounded.
Yeah. Yeah, and this show is called "People Are the Answer," but love is the answer that comes from people. And I certainly think in these divisive times, especially with social media, that loving themselves can certainly help them realize that everyone's human and that we can all love each other. And I really liked that you have your mission listed as to love everyone unconditionally all the time,
Hmm.
and I
That's
think that
important.
yeah,
Important because we live like this is the thing. Like I can have a stance on or belief or an opinion, but I'm open minded and humble enough to know it's my own, right? And if someone else has a contrary belief, opinion, stance than my own, I don't dislike them because of that.
yeah,
And I can understand them and disagree. Like I understand your belief, your position, and I disagree with it, but I don't dislike you as a person. So now I want to counsel you. I don't want you to come speak at my school. I don't, we got this thing is like if you don't agree with me, you're my enemy, right? And it's like,
yeah.
okay, what's your
It's
stance
awful.
on this? My stance is this. And if you're not this, oh, you're an idiot. You're this, you're that, you're that, like, and it's just bad, man. It's
It's a
bad.
shame that there's so much closed mindedness out there that people say, I'm on this side, you're on that side, and all we should do is fight if we're going to talk at all. When in reality, having an open mind and being willing to listen to others' perspectives is how we experience personal growth.
Yeah. Because my thing is, my personal philosophy is that I'm open minded to the possibility that tomorrow, next year, next decade, um, I can have a completely different position. And so I'm not rigid and my mind is not closed, it's opening up to hear new information. Um, but if our ideals or whatever opinions are not in alignment at this time, it's okay. I don't want to control you, right? And I don't want to counsel you. I just want to understand you and your perspective. Because through understanding you and your perspective, because we're all just a culmination of all of our experiences dictate our perspective. And through me learning about all of the influences and experiences that led to your perspective, I gained more insight, not just into you, but all the different things that led up to where you are today. And that makes me more a better informed person. Um, and I don't want to
Yeah,
counsel you. I don't want to harm you. I don't want to control you. I don't wish you or anyone any harm, you know. And even if you want to harm me, I just want to stop you from harming me. I don't want to harm you. I just want to
yeah,
stop you from harming me, and
right.
and that's to me that's just love, man. Like and
Yeah,
people just they're so focused on what they're against
yeah,
and not what they're for, and they're just so intolerant. And that would surprise me the most about being in society. What
mm,
surprised me the most in prison is how people forget you and how when you change your energy, you will attract all types of people that you'd never imagine. Because I was attracting professors from Princeton, Harvard, while I was in prison, right? And what surprised me the most about being out here is how unhappy people are with being free. I can't find no reason to be unhappy in America. I mean, it has its issues, but you're in America.
yeah.
That's the first thing. You're in
Yeah,
America.
I think a lot of people have been conditioned not to appreciate what we have here in the U.S. and um, like you said, there we have our plenty of issues, but there's a lot worse places to be in the world, and there's so many things that we have access to here that you wouldn't have access to in so many other places. So, hopefully we can rebuild that appreciation for being in this country.
Yeah. And even if you don't like it, you can become a millionaire here and repatriate somewhere else and
Yeah,
have enough money that you take with you and you'll be set somewhere else for the rest of your life.
yeah,
You know, it's a beautiful thing.
yeah. So we talked earlier about how you worked on your case throughout your time incarcerated, and you know during then and since then you've been pushing for good legislation in terms of ages that people are sentenced. In one of your interviews, I really like this quote that you said: "A lot of social ills perpetuate because people who are directly impacted by them are not effective at articulating their plights."
Right.
I just thought that was really important and something that we all need to be aware of, and hoping you can just speak a little more to that.
Through being a artist, a visual artist, most of the time at the price points that you sell your work, it's high net worth people. You know, people at the bottom, 99% of the people can't spend 30, 40, 50,000 on a painting. So I've been blessed to, to meet and build genuine relationships with high net worth people who um, have been immune from or privileged from e- experiencing um, what it's like to be incarcerated or have a loved one who's incarcerated, because they do experience drug and alcohol abuse, but they don't experience it from a perspective of someone who's impoverished and has to commit crimes to support the habit, right? So, and it's a beautiful thing because these individuals are directly in alignment with the resources that are needed to reverse some of the uh, culture or systems that are in place that perpetuates intergenerational poverty and illiteracy, the lack of access to capital in certain communities like where I come from. And through me having genuine relationships with people like this, and me being like the social scientist that I am, right? I learned their perspective. And through learning their perspective, I learned how to articulate my perspective better to them. Not only for them to understand, but them to understand and to move them in a visceral way to where as though they want to now commit some portion of their life to bringing about a positive outcome for people with my lived experience. Because, like, they never had anyone to shoot at them. They've never had anyone to beat them up, to take their sneakers. They've never seen anyone shot and murdered right in front of their doorstep. Um, so, and I think this is the problem, is that uh, people who are who come from poverty and um, and go through prison, they don't have relationships with people who are billionaires. They don't have relationships with people who create super PACs, right? They don't have relationships with people who have uh, donors dinners that raise $7 million in their estate in Palm Beach. They have no understanding of how things work on that level, right? On the M2, M3 level, and how people who um, grow up in that lifestyle, the boarding schools they go to, the fraternities, the sororities, like how this shapes their perspective. And me, I just had the opportunity to just gain access to people like this, and to build relationships with them and learn how to articulate um, our lived experience in a way that doesn't just generate pity, right? But that generates compassion and empathy that leads to direct action, to be like, okay, so if you were able to do this in 3 years with no direct investment from an angel investor or a hedge fund or a private equity firm, what can we do to create a fund right, that can invest in people like you when they in prison, when they get out of prison, to where they understand the culture of private placements and Series A, Series B, Series C, Series D funding, and they can start to come out with a reasonable expectation that they can access seed capital to become like you and even more than you, to where Jay-Z is not an anomaly. Jay-Z is the norm, right? So I could just talk to them in that language, and most people just don't have the lived experience to even to understand their perspective and their language and their lifestyle, right? And that's how I say the Wall Street Journal saved my life, because I was reading what they was reading. And through me reading what they
Right.
was reading, I was learning their lifestyle. I was learning their culture, where they golf at, where they ski at, where they go meet up at. So when I got access to them, I didn't generate pity from them. Like, oh, you did time in prison. It was like, oh my God. Like, how you know that? Like, oh, you know that? You know, you hip to that? Oh,
Right.
you put that in the paint? What does that mean? You breaking it? Oh, you hip to the Basel course? Oh my God. Where do you learn that? Like,
Right.
like I know, you know. And there's other people
Yeah.
who know or could know if they just had access to the capital. Mark
Right.
Zuckerberg didn't do Facebook without capital. You know,
Yeah.
he had capital. His roommate had capital initially. Then they introduced him to Sean Parker, and Sean Parker had the relationship with the people through Napster, and it was a whole village of people to be able to take the Facebook into now the Meta.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to just
Yeah.
extend that to people with my shared lived experience, and bridging that gap, bringing these two
Yeah.
bubbles, because we live in a bubble, they live in a bubble, and just like getting people to feel comfortable with expanding their bubble. We don't
Right.
have to bust a bubble. I think that's the fear. Like, if they're gonna take from us, like, no, nobody has to have their bubbles bust. We just going to elasticity, as they say in economics. We just going to expand bubbles.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I appreciate your ability to help people do that and expand their mindsets. And in terms of your criminal justice reform, I found reading about represent justice to be really interesting. My understanding is the organization uses the power of media to engage audiences in reimagining the justice system. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about your work on that project.
Yeah, with represent justice, what they do, they actually put people who have lived experience with incarceration as their ambassadors, and they create like campaign projects out of storytelling. So that's uniquely packaged towards each ambassador's strength. So for me, it was spoken word, the arts, and so just telling my story and using my poetry and things of that nature, where I'm speaking about children and the child's experience in the adult criminal legal system. Other people, one guy, his experience was being molested in the foster care system, and they kind of like create a whole artistic performance or narrative film about that perspective. And then the other one may be a woman in New York who did time in prison. And so it was great, because the first project we worked on was the Just Mercy film. So we were able to like campaign around that, meet some of the people that was Scott Budnick, what was he, the great work he's doing through his
Yeah, I know
his
Scott.
his yeah, Scott is the real deal. Scott,
Hmm.
um, Brian Stevenson, um,
Yeah, that movie Just Mercy he made about Brian is incredible.
right. So represent justice. What was cool about it was that instead of like most nonprofit organizations putting people at the front who have no lived experience, they actually put people at the front who actually was directly impacted, and I thought that was cool working with
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. Awesome. It's great to see organizations like
And they
that. And
paid us. And they paid us. It wasn't
oh,
like they shortchanged us. They paid us. It
yeah.
wasn't like come and tell us your story for free. They paid us,
Yeah.
which was important.
That's absolutely yes. In that situation, I mean, it's so incredibly important to be doing what they're doing properly.
Right.
So, you're working with a lot of other really interesting organizations. I'd love to touch on a few of them.
Mhm.
Like one of them I have on the list here is Halcyon.
Yeah, Halcyon is I received when I first got out. My first fellowship that I received was from Echo and Green for social entrepreneurs. I had a falling out with my my co founder, and so I'm still an alumni, but I let her go forward with the project, and then with Halcyon, it was my own fellowship as an artist, and it gave me a studio space, gave me resources, and unfortunately, the fellowship kind of ended weird because of the quarantine. But it was a great opportunity, like I said, to meet people who operate on a high level in the local and in the national, international art scene. Because at that time I was a performance artist and a writer, poetry and spoken word. And through that fellowship, it's kind of like how I transitioned into being a painter, just being around other creatives that was fellows with me, and you know, who had different mediums of expression, whether it was music or paintings or sculptures, dance. It was pretty cool. And it was definitely for me just getting out, gave me some money, gave me a place to stay, gave me a studio. It was amazing. I look forward now because during the quarantine, their arts lab was shut down. Their art, so the that part of the fellowship is no longer. But I actually have a meeting with them next week, and I want to come back and run it, and and take it to another level because I had a chance to go through it and see like the weaknesses in it. So now I can come back, and if they'll compensate me and allow me to be the director of, I think I know I could take it to another level. So I look forward to going back and working with them, because that's my kind of like my emphasis, with me coming home with them. It was a
Awesome.
big deal when I came home. Now I didn't been everywhere. So, but then it was like huge. It was a huge thing to be affiliated with them, and that's my foundation.
Right. Um, and then I know you also have a project called Idealionaires, and
Mm-hmm.
what is that all about? I know it involves your art.
Idealionaires is like it's something I created in prison, and it's just like just keep growing. It's like it's a movement, and how I envisioned it when I first came up with the concept was a space. At that time, it was physical, but now that I'm out, it could be physical, it could be virtual, it could be the metaverse, it could be augmented reality. It can just a space where creative people can come and exchange ideas, and through collaborative uh, engagement, come together and monetize their talents, and even to the point now where I'm like, we can create our own currency, we can create our own exchange. Like seeing what's being done. I forgot the guy last name, Vitalik, the guy who started Ethereum, the people who starting all these different coins and tokens and decentralized autonomous organizations. So like now, if you ask me now, I see our Billionaires as a decentralized autonomous organization, that creates space for artists and creatives, designers, architects, just creative people can come together, um, create wealth, and through the creation of wealth, create genuine equity that I don't think has never been uh, actualized in America. A space where no matter whether you're Jewish or black or straight or trans or poor, that you can be a part of something where you can engage with other creative people who are coming together purely for the love of creation, purely for the love of monetizing that creation, and not for the sake of materialism or individualistic material uh, gain. Not saying anything wrong with that either. It's just not what that's for. It's just about creating a space where creative people can access ideas and capital that they need to manifest their ideas. So and it's constantly evolving. Like just 6 months ago, I didn't know about a decentralized autonomous organization. So I would explain ideas as something different. But now I would see like, okay, like today it'll be a DAO for sure. I haven't done it yet, but I would say it is a decentralized autonomous organization, in the making. It'll have our billionaires will be a crypto token. It'll be a token. It'll be on a Coinbase. You know, that's where it would be today if I wanted to really it to be what it be.
Awesome. Well, it's cool how your vision is fitting in with the technologies that are growing in the Web3 world, and it sounds like a really inspiring community, and I'm so glad that it exists. Um, and
Yeah.
I know
People
part of your
just need
story.
equity. People need equity, not equality. That's one of my things. Fuck equality. We already equal. People need equity. People, trans people prostitute because they poor and their parents kick them out when they're young, and because they express their their gender uh, to their loved ones. Like I know you say I was born this, but I'm saying I feel like this, and their parents kick them out, and they're teenagers and they surviving through prostitution. But if they had equity, they wouldn't be prostitute. They have talents. They can design clothes. They can model. They can cook food. It's all different type of things that they can do. But they just don't have a community in place to provide the equity for them as an alternative to prostitution, right? Same way with me. People always ask me, "Have you changed?" No, I didn't change. The product changed. I never was a evil person. I just sold drugs, which was an evil act. But I wasn't evil. I didn't have a community in place to tell me that I can paint and my paintings could be in the museums and galleries throughout the world, right? It wasn't a decentralized autonomous organization in place for people like me. So I just did what I saw, sell drugs.
Yeah, so I think just your ability to show people what they can do and that there are more options out there than they realize can go, a really long way.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm learning to love people. I'm learning to like learning to love people because I was taught growing up not to trust white people, to hate gay people, Jewish people are stingy. I was taught these are things I was taught. So like one thing I learned in Confucianism or Taoism, I think it's Taoism, to unlearn. So I'm in the process of unlearning a lot of things so that I can love more dynamically, holistically. Um, so I'm in the process of unlearning, deconstructing some social constructs so that I can really really, really, really be genuinely powerful in love. 'Cause that's all that's left for me to do. I done did everything else I wanted to do. Everything I wanted to do when I was in prison. Get a house, get a car, got a Tesla, I got a Mercedes truck, I got a 3,300 square foot house, got another house, about to get another house, got a whole truckload of comic books and paintings, and it's nothing else for me to do. Got a beautiful wife, a kid. It's nothing else left for me to do but to do more for others. That's
Yeah, I
it.
mean, I can definitely appreciate that. And I think, in your process of unlearning to love so that you're able to love more and more people, I understand that you're also learning new things back in school.
In school, nah,
No, I thought you had
nah,
mentioned something about going back to school. No, we can cut this part
nah. I
then.
was nah. I mean, you don't have to cut it because I was enrolled in Georgetown before I got out, and once I got out, I was taking. I had to finish my semester at Georgetown, and my professor is begging me to finish my degree, but I don't want to go back to school. Um,
I can relate to
I
that for
never had
sure.
a job before, but now I'm starting to, if the position is right, I'm even considering taking a job. If the school is right and the situation is right, even though my art dealer tell me, don't go to, don't, they're going to come to you and they're going to offer you an opportunity to go to Yale for their master's in fine arts. Don't go to school. It's going to mess you up. Just stay raw. You know, like that's his thing. Like, don't, because now, you know, you got an opportunity, you know, people. So if I wanted to be like, I want to get my MFA. I'm pretty sure right now where I stand that I could probably go to Yale or, you know, whatever top school that I wanted to. If I directly really use my contacts to get in there, I can get in there and get me a master's in fine arts. Um, but I don't want to. But I would if this if I'm completely, so any billionaire that may hear this, this is for the billionaires, right? If I had the right situation to study fashion in Europe and architect, I would go. I would go to school. I would go to school definitely for fashion and architecture. I would definitely, because like I really want to be a designer. Like that's my passion. I really want to design cars. I really want to design buildings. I want to design prisons. You know, prisons are ineffective because they're designed by people who don't care about the people who come through them. But if I designed a prison, it'd be a it'd be a prisoner to prosperity pipeline. Just how it's designed and the colors that I put in and how safe it would be for everyone. Because I would design it in a way for success
Yeah.
and not for punishment.
That's a really powerful concept, and I've been talking to a few people lately about sort of incentive models, and right now, especially like the private prison industry, they're incentivized for
Mm-hmm.
people to be in jail, and it's awful. And the idea of turning that on its head and incentivizing these prisons to get people out and to put them on a
Mm-hmm.
great path, that's the direction we need to go. And your prison design concept is something that I think could be really powerful, and hopefully you'll get the opportunity to do that at some point.
Yeah, because like I used to be like private prisons are bad and I put it in my paintings. But then I got to thinking, I'm a private guy. I don't like the public, right? I'm for the private, sector. So it's it's bad if the only intent is financial gain. But I think the biggest upside for uh because we got a reality is people are committing crimes, and right now our only response is prison, right? I think that I would have a stronger chance of presenting a plan to a private prison than a government ran prison for them to go with my ideas on making prison a prosperity pipeline. I think I would easily be able to get into the private prison owners and them giving me the space to reconstruct their infrastructure to where as though the people that while they in it are more productive, and when they get out they'll never return than the government would in the public sector. So I'm even re-looking at, is private prisons a bad thing?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. The general kind of concept seems bad, and the idea that people are profiting on
Mm-hmm.
prisoners. But that said, I'm under the impression that private industry is a lot better at accomplishing things than the government. So if you had the
Right.
right mindset going into this private industry, then perhaps it could be done many times better.
Because just because it's private and just because it's a model to make money, it doesn't mean that it's automatically to destroy the people that come through it. It can be private, it can be profitable, but it also can be philanthropic. It's just what's going on with the prison, because the public prison is definitely not rehabilitative. So we know that, you know, it produces masses of an amount of recidivism, and I think it encourages it. So that has failed. So I think it's, I'm just, re-examining how I feel about that. Um, because the public, I have no faith in the public sector. I believe that the brightest individuals, the most efficient individuals, are in the private sector. And even if a person is brilliant and bright and efficient in the public sector, it's so much bureaucracy and red tape that gets in the way of their genius that they can't do anything. It's my humble opinion. I could be completely wrong. I mean, I could be completely wrong. It's just my opinion. And I'm open minded, But all I know is what we're doing now is not working. So,
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that perspective. And, via your writing and your art and your public speaking, I think you're creating tremendous impact for people and certainly changing many lives. And I'm curious, is there a story of when you really saw how your work could affect change, or maybe when someone came up to you and said, this is how you've affected me, that really hit home?
wow. I mean, a lot of times, when I was 16, we filmed a documentary at DC jail titled Thug Life in DC, and it aired on HBO. It won an Emmy Award for Documentary of the Year in '98. And so many people now that I'm out contact me on Instagram and Facebook, and like, when I saw that documentary, my life was going left, and I was a kid. And when I saw what they did to you, I went right, completely right, right, and I never looked back. I moved down south, and one guy I met recently, I was in my old neighborhood at a little league football game. This big guy too, like 6'5". He walked up to me and was like, "Man, you don't know who I am, do you?" You know me, I'm like, "Nah, what's up?" And he like, "Man, you saved my life." And he was explaining about how one day he saw me shoot someone. And he was like, "And you looked directly at me." He said, "You could have shot me, but you stopped and you pushed me out the way." Right? And I'm like, wow. Like, this kid saw me at my worst. He saw me shooting someone. Right? And he said that impacted him. And then when he saw the documentary, because he was like, "Man, I kind of was getting into your lifestyle when you got locked up. And then I saw your documentary and I changed my life." He said, "I saw you at your worst, and I saw you in jail, and I saw you articulating in this documentary like what it would be like to spend the rest of your life in prison." And that was my moment of awakening. And he was like, "I want you to meet my son." He went on the field, he got his son. He was like, he said, "Had it not been for you not shooting me, and had it not been for you going to jail for what you went to jail for, and documenting your suffering, your reality to the world, I would have followed in your direction." Because a lot of people praised what you did for shooting the guy. It was praised, right? Neighborhood bully. So it was praised. But when I saw the consequences, that made me change my life. And because of that, I have my son here today. And I was when you did that day, I was my son's age. So that type of impact, it was amazing.
Yeah, that's really powerful. And
It was amazing.
It's gotta...
And to have people who saw me at my worst in my old hood, and when I go through there, they be like, "Man, what you doing out here?" Like they like shield around me, like, "What you doing out here, man? Hurry up and get out of here, man." I'm like, "Nah, I'm just coming to see. All right, you see us, man. We proud of you, man." But go on, get back in your car and go. Ain't nothing out here. We proud of you, man. We see you on Instagram and all. Keep doing what you're doing. So um, yeah, it's amazing, man. It's amazing the feedback that I get, from people that you impact, and you don't even know it.
Yeah.
You don't even know the people that you touch with your story.
Yeah, and
It's
I'm sure
humbling.
for everyone that does speak to you, I'm sure there's plenty that don't, and it's got to feel really good to know that despite all the struggles you've dealt with, you've been able to create that kind of impact in people's lives.
And even having you have to have also that humility, because it's gonna be some people that's like, you sold drugs, you shot people, you should never come home. That guy that your friend killed and you didn't help the government to prosecute that person, you should have went to prison for not helping him, right? That family can't get their son back, you know. So why should you get your life back? You should stay in jail forever. And we have to learn how to we have to learn how to even love people that disagree with us. I don't want to just be about the people that praise you and celebrate you, because it's people that don't. It's people that hate you just for being successful. It's people that feel like, man, I did all the right things. I went to school, I went to college, I never sold drugs, I never did anything wrong, and I didn't receive anything but student loan debt. And here you are, you get to come home and you get to do this and this and that, and I don't think you should get the opportunity to do what you're doing. So, for me, it's like even being able to be open-minded to understand their perspective and to know that from their perspective, they're not wrong. From their perspective, they are right. You see what I'm saying? And then from my perspective, I just respectfully disagree with them. But it doesn't mean that I hate them, because I'm impacting them too. Because even though they disagree with me, they're still seeing someone that they believe should have never returned to society, return to society, and be other than the person that they believe should never have the opportunity to return. So whether they are admitting it or not, they're still being impacted to see that it can be done.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see how people respond to your work and your story. And I was curious. I know you had a really tough upbringing before you ended up incarcerated, but did you ever come across anyone surprisingly generous, or anyone that showed you the importance of giving back in the future, when you were a kid?
All the time. Like when I was selling drugs, all up until the day I came to prison, it was guys that were selling drugs that always would tell me, why don't you go to school, man? Why are you out here? You're not like them. They'll say that in front of my friends. You're not like them. You smart. They can't go to school. You can. You can actually go to school and be something. They can't go to school and be nothing. They have to be here. You're choosing to be here, right? And these are guys that selling drugs and robbing and killing, and even one older drug dealer, he told me like, man, look, how much money you make a day? And I told him, he said, listen, if you go to school, I'll pay you what you make in a day. And when you get out of school, hang with me. And I did that for like 2 weeks. And he was like, man, all I want you to do is go to school. He believed in me. I think a lot of time people see that drug dealers, guys that's in prison, the guys that I met in prison, they gave me books, they gave me love, they took their time, they educated me, they gave me perspective, they gave me class. Like these guys, the way that they wore their prison uniforms was always ironed, and like they had on Italian made, tailor-made suits, and they conducted themselves as chief executive officers or chairmen of the board of directors. And when you sat at the table with them, whether they were kingpins or bank robbers or Italian mafia guys, they conducted themselves in a way that represented class. And these guys were very generous with me. You know, they gave me their time, they gave me their insight, and they loved on me. And I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for them. They taught me how to articulate my plight and encouraged me to write books. All that came from them. So it's always been angels in my journey. Always.
Yeah.
You know, it's just I had to get to a point where I start listening and accepting the help.
Well, it's nice to hear that you were able to find that support in places where others might not expect it. And, you know, in that sort of realm, the angels on your journey, is there anyone in particular that you've considered a mentor over the years?
Well, I'm going to say in prison is a guy named Michael Norwood, known as Minka. And he's an author. He has his own publishing company. He's a very famous jailhouse lawyer. Prides himself on being the most efficient jailhouse lawyer in America. Have had so many people released that he wrote a book about it. And you know, his book, No, I'm Looking for a Way Out, is an account of all the people that he helped to get out. And he the one who taught me how to start my own publishing company. He's the one who, when I started my own publishing company and I published my first book, he saw me throw a tantrum on a basketball court in a basketball game or the football, one of those sports I used to play. He was like, you're a CEO of your company now, and if you be reacting like a spoiled child to a bad call that a referee made, it blemishes your brand. Who wants to buy a book from a guy that can't control his temper in a basketball game? And he just gave me a perspective. It stuck with me for the rest of my life. So definitely him, and he's the reason why I started to reach out to people about my story and why I wrote my books. And so I would not be here without him. Him on the outside, inside, and on the outside, a guy named John Burbank, the founder of Passport Capital. I met him at a talk that I did on MLK Day in 2020 in San Francisco at the Apple store. The people at Apple took me to dinner after my talk, and he sat next to me and he was asking me what I was doing, and I was like, I'm doing these photo poetry pieces right now, and he was like, well, do you sell them? I'm like, yeah. He said, well, let me get one of each, and he flew me back to San Francisco. Let me stay at this mansion by the Golden Gate Bridge, and bought the artwork and stayed in contact with me every day since then. When I posted on Instagram that I wanted to go into fashion, he contacted me and introduced me to the people in Paris and London that allowed me to be able to launch my first fashion collection next month, because he's the lead investor in the fashion app. And so he's just a person has been consistent in putting me in position to win big, and also just to talk to. It ain't just business. Sometimes it's just like, hey, how you doing? Because he went through some recent loss of loved ones during the pandemic, and my story, my perspective gave him perspective, and it helped him to go through what he was going through, even though he's a billionaire. $1 billion don't mean nothing when your dad dies and your brother dies, and you're going through real life problems, so to have people, who love you, who you trust sharing what you're going through and can give you perspective that betters your internal ecosystem is important. And for me, he's always been someone. I don't care if I text him 2, 3, 4 in the morning, and he happens to be in the country on my time zone, or he's in London or California, he always responds. Always responds, always. And he's always been there for me, and he's been a mentor. And he's definitely been investing in just seeing me win. John Burbank, my guy, Big John. And he owns the and he owns the Warriors. He's the owner of the Warriors, so we get to go to the Warriors games when everything is opened up and
Nice.
and see the Warriors. So that's cool too.
That's awesome. One of the premier sports organizations for sure, and just that Mr. Burbank has been there for you is awesome, and it speaks to that energy that you talked about that you've been putting out there, and the vibrations, and the people that come to you in a way, and he's a great example of that.
Yeah.
So before I get on with the last few questions, I know some people will just be listening, but for those that can see the beautiful artwork behind you, I'd love to hear a little bit about that piece.
It's actually two pieces side by side. So the black and white piece, it's inspired by two novels that I've read. The top part says John Coffey and Hill. John Coffey is a character in the Stephen King novel I read called Green Mile. A lot of people may have seen the movie with Tom Hanks and Michael Duncan Clark. He's someone who's innocently convicted, put on death row, but has the power to heal and is willing to even heal those who are holding them captive. The scene where he goes to the prison warden's house and sucks the cancer out of his wife just shows, to me, was a powerful character, not just in stature, but in his love and his ability to heal. And then at the bottom is Bigger Thomas and Harm, and it's a character from a historical novel known as Native Son, which is also a movie. And this character, Bigger Thomas, actually does harm a woman in a novel, and he wrestles with all of the different complexities with race and class, him being black in the early 20th century, and how that impacted his reaction that made him or coerced him to do this horrible act to this white woman. And it just goes to me, it's like the dichotomy between John Coffey and Bigger Thomas in the way that black men are seen, either because both were black, or one was innocent, one was guilty, one was healing, and one harmed, but they both ended up dead. The same outcome, which is interesting. And one author was Stephen King, white, and one was black, Richard Wright. And then this piece to the left, it has a quote: "When the prison doors are open, the real dragon will fly out." And then at the bottom is based on a true story. So that quote was a quote that I read in a book, and the quote comes from Ho Chi Minh. General Ho Chi Minh was the general of the Communist Army in Vietnam, and I always felt that when I read that quote, I always felt that it was some guys, and I put based on a true story because I feel like it's a testament to my life. I always felt like it was some guys in prison who were just beautiful human beings, and they were serving a lot of time. They had a lot of talent, a lot of ideas, and I knew that once they got the opportunity to get out, that they would do great things. And to now to see like the laws changing, whether it's the IRA legislation that I got out on, the First Step Act that Trump signed, they got a lot of guys out of federal prison I knew who had life. Those guys are now out. They got their own nonprofit organizations, their own businesses. They're like violence interrupters in the community, husbands, fathers, homeowners. I mean, they just added to the wealth of the nation, as Adam Smith mentioned, immaturely and maturely, socially and economically. So I knew that once they got the opportunity to get out, that they would breathe fire, that fire of life and love and light into the world, and the world would recognize how dark it was without them. And I think I'm just an individual example of so many women and men who spent time in prison, decades in prison, now getting the opportunity to get out and shine. Just like the recent interview that Larry Miller did with CBS Morning News. Larry Miller is the president of the Jordan brand. And, no one never knew that at the age of 12, he killed someone and went to jail for it, and then got out and went to prison again and again. and then eventually changed his life, and he became the president of the biggest shoe brand in the world, and no one never knew his act that he did, and he chose to come out and tell his story, to move past the shame, because when we cause harm, people shame us instead of healing us, right? And then when we heal, people still harm us because they don't understand love, right? Um, so that part right there, people like Larry Miller, people like Don King, people like Martha Stewart, Michael Milken, people who have went to prison, whether for a matter of months or years or decades, people who made mistakes and experienced prison, but had the opportunity to fly out and to breathe their fire on the world, their light, so that people could see the darkness that they are have grown immune to. When you're immune to darkness, you don't even know it's there until somebody flash a light.
Yeah, it's beautiful work, and I love what it represents, and I really appreciate you sharing those details.
Hopefully, we can
Yeah,
get you to give me about 30,000 for one of these pieces one day.
would love to check them out. Um, yeah, I mean, amazing work, and this is the point in the program where, if you'd like, you can ask me a question.
Oh, okay. If love had a color, what would it be?
Wow, that's definitely the hardest question that I've been asked on here. Uh, I have literally no idea how to answer that, but my mind leans rainbow because of the LGBTQIA plus movement, and
Mhm.
what that flag represents, and also the BIPOC version of that flag, and um, so I lean that it would be all colors.
I think, and that's the beauty of like the title of the show is the people are the answer, right? And I remember it was a quote where somebody said, "I don't even people people seek for me to have the answer. I don't even know the question." Right? So to encounter a question that we don't have the answer for at the time, um, I think it's okay. And I think the thing is that even though people are the answer, right? Sometimes it's just not there yet. And we need to learn to give people the space to find their truth and their answer, and not to impose our response on others. Because I may
Yeah,
say the color, if love had a color, what would it be? I might say green because of this in the environment. Da, da, da. I might say black because black. Da, da, da. I might say white because da, 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 da. And I become so hell bent on this that even when I'm asking you the question and you're giving me the answer, I'm not even listening to understand you. I'm just listening to respond to you, right? So
right.
I threw you a question that I believe um, that you probably never thought of before, and also give you a chance to revisit it as you live on, and to be
Yeah,
able to see how your answers or your answer to the question evolves with perspective. Because color
yeah,
is perspective, right? The eyes only see light. Once you study sight, color is, we just see spectrums of light. We don't even really see the images that we think we see. That's from the brain. So it's a beautiful thing.
yeah. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. I will definitely consider or continue to think about that, and
It's a good question to ask your wife and kids.
yeah, I'll keep
Yeah.
that in mind.
Yeah.
Um, so there's one question in particular that I've been asking all my guests, and kind of just been learning a lot from the answers. Some are similar, some aren't. But if you could snap your fingers and fix one thing in the world, what would it be, and how do you think that change would reverberate?
I would fix myself. I would fix myself. I would fix um, all the things that I was taught to fear, all the things that I was taught to hate, all the things I was taught to prejudge. And through fixing that, I think that I would become a more loving person, a more intentional person. Um, and if I can fix me, I can fix the whole world because I'm nothing but energy. We're all interconnected by energy. And just through me fixing myself, it'll fix my world. Because every individual, whether through physical interactions or social media, virtual communication, will be impacted by my aura, by my energy, by my vibrations, and through that, that'll be changing the world. I would just fix myself. I think a lot of people just need to fix themselves, and the world
I
will be a
like
whole
it.
lot better. Yeah,
I like it. I think it's a simple but impactful answer, and um, it's a good way to think about it.
yeah.
I really, really appreciate you taking this time to talk with me. It's been amazing to hear your story and hear your perspectives, and um, I think clearly all that you've been through has really taught you a lot, and you're always seeking to learn more. And I think that's powerful and inspiring. And I know that others listening are going to be inspired as well, and they'll surely wonder, how can they support you and your impact?
Yeah, the greatest way to support me is just fix yourself. Be committed to loving yourself, to love those that love you, to even consider loving those who hate you. Um, to consider that like hate really isn't real. It's just a void of love. And for me, if you support love, you support me. I believe we all interconnected. The only thing that separates us is the ideas and the ideals that we've been taught to separate us. Whether it's race or economic class and status and gender and religions, sexuality, disabilities, age, infirmity, all these different social constructions that we've been conditioned to accept as filters by which we see ourselves in the world. Um, so I think the greatest way of helping me is like transcending those filters, those constructions, um, and just seeing love. Leading with love, and I think it begins with loving yourself. If you love yourself, um, then it'll be easier to not harm other people and love other people, and that's just the greatest way to support me. Um, Paintings a sale, music a sale, clothes a sale, because I'm leading with love. So at this juncture right here, I understand that um, the commercial success, or even the social impact, it has nothing to do with me being smart or taking my SATs or nothing like that. It's just like once I made a decision to commit to love, that is the greatest resource, more than oil, more than gold, more than Bitcoin, that people are missing. And once you present it to the market, they grab it, resonates with them, whether subconsciously or consciously, and it's infectious, way more infectious than the coronavirus, because love is what's needed. It's what's needed.
Yeah, that's beautiful, and love is certainly a good theme to end on. It was talked about, throughout our discussion, and hope to see the love in the world grow. And as people love themselves more, hopefully they'll continue to love their neighbors more. And again, thank you so much for joining me, and look forward to keeping the conversation going together.
Thank you. Looking forward to seeing you soon. Hopefully, um, it's definitely in my intentions to get out there. And you know, before I went to prison, I had the opportunity to ski a couple of times. I enjoyed it, so it's definitely been on my bucket list to get out to Aspen and go skiing. So hopefully we'll see each other soon. And this pandemic just will slow up a little bit and give me the opportunity to travel.
Awesome. Yeah, looking forward to it.
All
Halim,
right.
thank you so much.
Have a blessed day.
Thanks for listening to this episode of People Are the Answer. To find out more, go to peoplearetheanswer.com.